Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Chai Together. I am your founder and host, Pratibha Day. You are tuning in for your cup of courage, hope, and imagination today. Today, I have with me a very special guest and a great friend of mine, Mr. Jake Fowler from the Hustle for the Hunger podcast. And today we will be discussing mental health challenges living overseas. How are you, Jake?
Pratibha, I'm great, and so are you.
Oh, I like
Thank
that.
you so
Les does that.
much.
You want to tell everyone a
Thanks
bit
so
about
much.
yourself?
Sure. Firstly, just thanks so much for inviting me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. And when you contacted me, I know it took us a little while to get this done, but here we are. I'm very glad we're both here. And even more so, I'm glad that you asked me to talk about the mental health in moving overseas. Of course, the topic of mental health is opening up a lot these days, and that's a fantastic thing. It's something I'm very pleased to be a part of and have been kind of shouting from the rooftops for a long time about. But in this particular subject, I don't think it's talked about very much. And I think today, uncovering that and giving anyone that's watching this later will give us, the audience, not us, a lot of value. So thanks for that. But yes, who am I? I should probably introduce myself before we start talking about what we're talking about, so that people actually know who I am and why I am qualified to talk about this. My name is Jake Fowler, as Pratibha mentioned. I'm originally from Birmingham, England. I moved to Australia, Melbourne, Australia, 5 years ago, and I would just happily say that was the single biggest improvement I ever made to my life, and has been up to this point in life. It wasn't an easy thing to do. The reasons I did it was because I just wanted a new challenge, a new change, something fresh, some new opportunities, and I knew that Australia was a place I could get those opportunities. I am a plumber by trade, and I have been since I left school. I still do a little bit of plumbing now, but I've kind of stepped away from that because now I'm going into public speaking, and I host a podcast, the Hunger for the Hustle podcast, as Pratibha mentioned. Also getting into writing some books and really just focusing a lot of my time on that. And I have some online businesses as well, which I've grown to a level that enabled me to actually not have to be a plumber anymore, which was something after 15 years, still got love for it, but just doesn't fulfill me anymore. I'm just wondering how we can stop this awful green light. I mean, it's not Halloween anymore, but it looks like there's still a ghost in my room there, doesn't it?
I have to say you have been hungry. I think the ghost wants to be a part of the podcast.
I think I've managed to get rid of him now, so that should.
You are in like an ancient, setting, virtually. Now you're the ghost.
There we go. That should be.
Oh, it's there.
Spooky, isn't it?
This is so fun.
I'll tell you what we can do.
Do
you reckon we can just deal with it? I think if I don't move, it doesn't happen. Okay. Right, so it looks like we might have a third guest on the podcast today.
That's okay. It was going to be Latoria, but now it's.
Oh, she's here in spirit.
So I do want to say that Jake has been hungry. He has had possibly over 100 people already on the Hustle for the Hunger podcast, and it really is a hustle. How many guests now, Jake?
I'm up to 38 at the moment, but I mean, you're right in what you said there. The goal is 100 before the end of the year, before Christmas.
Yeah.
And that is going to happen. And I just really enjoy them. It's a space that I provide for people to have their voice heard and give out whatever message they have to the world. And of course, talk about what they're doing at the moment. What are they working on? Are they writing a book? Are they making are they in a TV show? Are they making a film? They come up with a new business. It's particularly a space where we share what it takes to start a business and the challenges inside that, because there's just a hell of a lot.
Just let it be. Yeah, so I was on Jake's podcast, and that's also on one of the Chai Together videos if you guys want to watch it. And it was really incredible and very liberating. And I have to say, the more that you speak about yourself and what you're doing, the more your goals come to life as well.
Yes, it's true, because you become more aware of them, right? And self-awareness is what it's all about. We've been doing this we're both into some mindset training, some thinking into results, and we were both in the Power Voice as well, right? We both spoke at that summit, which was a wonderful opportunity.
Congrats to us.
Congrats to you too. You did a great job.
Yeah.
It's all about, for me, I'm becoming more and more, it's becoming more aware of the self-awareness inside itself. And talking about moving countries, that's something that it massively brings, particularly because, you know, for me, and I know you've moved around countries as well. We both did it on our own, right? So when you spend a lot of time on your own, you tend to just think about yourself a lot, and you don't have people to answer some of the questions for you. So you're forced to go into your own mind, answer your own questions, and be your own best friend as well, I find. And I think that's a really good part of it. It builds up your character, builds up your inner strength, and builds up your awareness of self-awareness.
So for me, I want to start by saying that, so I moved to Thailand last year, possibly end of April 31st, March 31st. And so I was there 10 months up until this January 16th. So for you, you moved to Australia. So the difference was the language barrier didn't change for you at all, did it?
Wow, that's questionable, isn't it? Because I don't know if anyone's ever spent much time in Australia or heard many Australian people speaking. Of course, it is English, but it's not what we call the Queen's English. There's still a bit to learn. Obviously, there's no language barrier in that you have to learn a new language, but you will still find yourself in situations where you have not got a clue what people are saying. And you know, to that point, I was speaking to someone yesterday. If I was with a bunch of my friends from Birmingham, England, you know, guys that I went to school with and really grew up with, spent a lot of time with, and we were all, you know, at the pub or somewhere socially, spending some time together and kind of in our lingo, and Australian people were there, they would not have a clue what we were saying. And I don't think many other people outside of that circle would know. And it would be exactly the same for my English friends if and when they do come to Australia and I'm there with some of my Australian friends there, and you know, your linguistics change to kind of adapt to the environment, and they can do that very quickly, I find. So there was no need for a complete immersion into a new language for me. However, I did have to adapt to, what does that word mean? And Australians have a tendency to shorten words, sometimes that actually end up longer than the original word itself, which is crazy. But lots of fun. And I actually, so in the UK as well, that's a thing. In the UK, I could actually go 10 miles from the house I grew up in the UK and pretty much find it very difficult to understand someone, because there's just such a vast variety of dialect and accents within the same language. Whereas with Australia, it's not so much diverse in that. There's only really of a country that's around about the size of the US, actually, just kind of turned in a different way. There's probably only 5 or 6 kind of different types of accents. But no, I still say now that I could happily just listen to a couple of Aussies just conversing and just be in the background, and I could just listen for hours and really enjoy it. It's an accent I've become fond of, and I've somewhat picked some of it up along the way.
So what are some of the responses you get to when they hear your accent? Do they just ask you, are you kidding, or where are you from?
A lot of people think that you're Irish. I'm not sure if that's because people from Birmingham sound a little bit a lot like people from Ireland, or just, I mean, and it's interesting, I've actually been reading a book about it recently. I've got it just here, Australia, a biography of a nation. And of course, I'll give a little bit of history on that for anyone who doesn't know, because perhaps a lot of the audience won't know that Australia was, of course, it was originally founded by the Dutch, and they called it, can't quite think what they called it. Van Diemen's Land, they called it. They said that it was, you know, a non-fertile land, not worth bothering with, keep on sailing. And then Captain Cook came along many years later. I believe it would be in the maybe late 1700s, actually, and the Dutch came in the 1600s. My numbers are a little off, but the narrative is correct. Captain Cook came and he first went to Botany Bay, and he said, no, actually, I reckon we although we kind of wrecked on the coral on the way in, I reckon that this place, we could make something of this place. And what they did decide to make of it, in fact, was because at the time the jails in the UK were getting just inundated and over full. They said, why don't we start sending some of these convicts away to Australia, this new land that we've claimed as our own, as the British did in many places. And essentially it became a land that existed with majority of the prisoners there, the convicts there, were Irish Catholic, and the majority of the jailers, the guys that were running the jails, were Protestant English, Scottish and Welsh. So there was always that kind of, and the whole nation was built on them people. Of course, they weren't the only people that had been in Australasia. The Aboriginal people had been here for 55,000 years prior and explored the land wholly and completely, and give every creek, tree, gully, ravine, valley a name. That's a whole other story of what happened with them and what white people did, which is actually really a terrible and very sad story, to be honest. But we won't go there today. We need a whole other episode for that. But yeah, so it was essentially a nation built of convicts and jailers. So and that pertains to, I think, that narrative coming down the line, that is anyone who doesn't have an Australian accent, or they're probably Irish, particularly if they live where I live in Melbourne, where you get a lot of people, backpackers, young people who come from the UK or Ireland and looking to set up a new life and new opportunities. But in that, so you get a lot of people saying, "Oh, are you from Ireland?" or but then you'll get the odd person who gets you and they'll go, "Ah, yeah, you're from Birmingham, aren't you? I know, I've been there." And it really surprises me. Then that always usually leads to a conversation. Anyone who has any prior knowledge, you usually find, has been to the UK, and if they're Australian, they've been to London. And typically you can find that kind of means they stayed in Shepherd's Bush and didn't really go much further than that, because that's where a lot of the Australian contingent goes and lives and works in London. The wages are similar to Melbourne. But then you will always find the explorer who's been all over the UK and has also been to Birmingham and usually don't stay too long in Birmingham. I've never quite figured out why that was. Probably the same reason I left. But yeah, it's and then you get people who kind of, it's like Vegemite or Marmite, right? They either love it or hate it. And yeah, particularly that can become interesting. You get a lot of people, like you do anyway, right? They instantly try and relay your accent back to you, which sometimes can be quite surprising how good they are, or can just make you cringe.
So when I worked at Lockheed Martin, I did have the Australian Navy come visit, and I did hear something similar regarding to the history that you're talking about, the jails. So that was a benefit because, the Japanese Navy would come, because I worked at a naval base for Lockheed Martin. So it was really interesting. And I want to start by asking, when you first moved to Australia, what did you find to be the most challenging, and how long has it been now since you moved?
It's coming up. In fact, it's just been over 5 years. I moved here on the 15th of October, 2015. So I've been here 5 years and almost a month.
So what was the most challenging for you when you first moved? Like within the first month, was there anything that's super challenging?
Well, of course, and we touched on this off camera beforehand, that it's new, it's all exciting. I had a leaving party, an Australian themed leaving party. All my family and friends showed up. It was fantastic. Those kind of few days before leaving, you're in a whirlwind because you're just trying to say bye to everyone whilst trying to wrap your life up in boxes and get it in storage and cross all the I's and dot all the T's. And if you really know you're going to do this, which I did, you're closing things down, you're closing bank accounts down, all those kind of formalities. A few things that you forget to do, like I forgot to tell the government that I wasn't going to be living there, so they wondered why I wasn't sending tax returns a couple of years later. But you are caught up in the excitement of it, and it's all very exciting. And one thing I did actually, which was very special, I haven't pulled this book out for a while. I wonder where it is actually. But at my leaving party, I passed around a book to everyone. I just kind of let a book go free flowing around, and I said, if anyone wants to write a message in there, send me on my way, then please do. And I remember reading that on the plane, and it you know brought me completely to tears on the plane reading it, because it was just, it then became quite, you know, when you get kind of 18, 19 hours into a 22, 23-hour flight, it becomes quite sobering. And I mean sobering in every sense of the word. I don't drink on long haul flights because it just makes the jet lag so much worse. I think you just have to keep constantly hydrated and drink a lot more than you usually would in terms of water. So it was sobering, you know, in the actual sobering sense, and the sobering in, you know, okay, here we go, it's happening now. Now, you know, you've got to make a commitment here to do this, and you kind of, you know, I could feel like it sounds strange, but as the plane got, you know, you have the screen on the planes now, and it shows you moving across the world, and physically, as I got further and further away from my family, I felt a little bit more and more disconnected from them. And then I was reading this book that I had in my handful of messages from them wishing me farewell, and yeah, it got very, very overwhelming, and yeah, there were a few tears on that flight. But of course I landed. It was a little bit before it is now in the year, where the weather just turns, the sunshine's fantastic. I must say I had been here before. I'd been to where I actually moved to before, which was always good, and privy to do that, because I find that, you know, I wasn't completely like a deer in the headlights. I had some prior knowledge of the place, and a bit more, you know, a bit more to go off. So I knew where I was going as well. You know, I knew that I could get from the airport and what bus to get to where I needed to get to. Met my friend who I was staying at his place, so that was good. Knew some people here. Got a fresh haircut and went straight down the beach, and really enjoyed it. But you know, it's you need a mental toolbox, is what I've realised since. You need a mental toolbox to be able to not just move. The moving part is easy. The physicality of it is easy, particularly nowadays with, I mean, even now in Corona, you can still get 3 or 4 flights a day between the UK and Australia. They just cost a bit more and take a bit longer. Typically, there would be double that amount. So the physicality of it is really easy, isn't it, these days? You book the ticket, you pack your stuff up, you get a flight. Yeah, okay, there's some challenges inside that, but that's what I see as the easy part. The difficult part is, okay, when you get here now, if you don't have any friends, I had some, but I still have to make new friends, new connections, new professional connections. What are you going to do for work? How's that going to look? You essentially, I was talking with a gentleman about this on my podcast the other day, you have to forget what you built up before, because you mean nothing in this new environment. And that seems like a bit of a harsh way to put it to the audience here today, but it's how it is, right? What you did and what you worked at before and the levels you worked up to, okay, you might have these qualifications in the hand, but you know, you have no prior kind of validation here. You could almost call it social proof, but in the physical sense. So you'll go to places saying, I've done X, Y, and Z, and they're going, well, okay, you know, you may have been a plumber doing this, but I think we'll just start you off sweeping floors again and cleaning up after the other plumbers and see how that goes. But you know, I had the trying to think of the word for it. I had, you know, the understanding of that, and remove my ego out of it, the humbleness, I suppose, to go, yeah, look, it's cool, I could start again. And I think that was good with that was that even though I was kind of starting, you know, just cleaning up factories and sweeping floors, it was still way better money than it was when I left the UK, because the people are just paid so much better here, and the lifestyle is so much better, and you get so much better working life.
I have heard that UK is very poor, not even in just a financial sense, but quality in things. So I had a roommate in Thailand, an older lady who came from the UK, and she was flat broke, like her and her husband, and she came to Thailand for an opportunity to teach, and that seemed to be more resourceful than UK. But
I would agree with that.
She hated UK.
The simple analogy, it's not an analogy, the simple way I like to phrase it is, in the UK, I felt like everyone lived to work, whereas in Australia, people work to live. And that's, I think, a balance that across the world plays out, that, and it's not just, okay, that's how it is in this country. That's how it could be from city to city or town to town or village to village or just household to household. It's a balance. We can all get very mixed up sometimes, but you have to readdress. You do work so you can live. You do not live so you can work. And if you get wrapped up in the latter sometimes too much, I think it can lead to a lot of unhappiness, a lot of unfulfillment. That can lead to, the darker side of things, depression and despair, and ultimately disease.
Yes, dis-ease. So what are the things you would have in your toolbox, because you're going to put this information in your upcoming book, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah. And thanks for mentioning that. There's going to be a book coming out called How to Move to the Other Side of the World and Get Away with It. Subtitle: The Mental Toolbox You Need to move countries or emigrate. I'm still kind of putting it together, but yeah, that's what it's going to be. But the first two are persistence and patience. The second two are determination and resilience. So they're the kind of core four. That's three. That's four. They're the core four. So persistence and patience, because you're going to get knocked back, right? It's just like anything, you're going to get knocked back. And I can tell a story with inside that. So I went from, sweeping the floors, cleaning the factories, did that so well that I remember the guy asked me back. I always make sure that I make a personal connection with people. I make sure I remember their name from the get-go. I kind of try to dial in to figure out who they are, and where I can spark conversations off that with them, find out what they're like. Are they into horse racing? Are they into, golf? And trying. So I in professional life, I'm always trying to make them connections so people remember me, because if people remember you, then that's going to lead to them asking you to come back and do more work. And sure enough, this guy did. But by then I'd very fortunately already moved on and said, sorry, I can't come back and work for you because I found a plumbing job now, which is why I'm here. And this plumbing job I'd found, the guy said, yeah, you can do a bit. Yeah, you can do a bit of plumbing, mate. I'll give you a go. That's what he said. And I thought, okay, that sounds fair and good. So he gave me a go. And within 4 weeks later, I was working in the roof of a factory on a 40-degree day. So in the roof of the factory, it was probably over 50 degrees. And the work was that hot. And of course, this was something I wasn't used to being from the UK. I hadn't adjusted to the climate yet. It was that hot that I physically couldn't carry out the work. I really couldn't get it done. But I did get it done, but it wasn't to a standard that was correct and complete. Then the guy who had employed me at the end of the day gave me a phone call and he said, look, we need to talk. I don't think your work is up to the par that we want, and I'm going to reduce your wages instantly he told me he'd pay me 35 and then he wanted to pay me 20, which was a big drop, right? That's a huge drop. You work that out over a day, a week, a month.
Yes, that's construction.
Yeah.
Labor.
Pardon?
That's physical labor.
Yeah. So I was, it's skilled labor as well, right? It's plumbing. It's something that, it's anyone can sweep a floor, clear up a factory, but to actually do plumbing work, it takes a certain amount of skills and knowledge, and it takes you a certain amount of years to acquire, hone, and perfect those skills and knowledge. So I was very unhappy with that, and I completely reacted instead of responded. And what I did do I was clearing up at the end of the day, and all my tools were in a pile on one side of the room, and I got my hammer and I just threw it across the room to shortcut me having to walk across the room. Not in like a fit of rage or anger, but I just thought, I'm going to skim that across. And it made me feel a little bit better and a little bit more relieved. Little to my knowledge did I know that someone had their eyes on me doing it, and then they later claimed that I damaged the floor, which I hadn't. It was just a cop-out to this guy wanted to get rid of me, right? And he needed a good excuse, and that was the perfect excuse. Came along at the perfect time. I remember driving home that day, getting home after trying to salvage it with him and saying, oh, can't we do a little bit more work here? And he's like, no, we're done. There's no more work for you here. And that brought me to tears again that day in the car. Just a few weeks after being here, I thought, damn, that's I've been rejected there. But I didn't let it waver me down, and this is why I say persistence is key here, because you're gonna need persistence. It's not just all going to work for you straight away. It's not just all going to line for you straight away, and quite frankly, nor should it, because anything that's easy isn't worth it. That's what I truly believe, and many people go, well, I don't always believe that. Well, I do, and I think if something's really easy, you can sometimes not fully respect and appreciate the value that you get from it, right? So it's going to be tough, and you're going to need persistence, number one. Number two, patience. You're going to need patience, which directly dials into that and walks along the street hand in hand. I don't know where patience and persistence live, but I can guarantee you, if you found out where they live, they'd be very comfortably living in the same house together. Patience is something that you're going to need, right? You can have a plan, you can have a goal, you can have a date set. It's always fine to achieve your goals and plans early, but sometimes they're going to come late. But, and that's kind of, I'm a goal setter. I know you are too, Pratiba, and goal setting is probably something that you're going to do when you move to a foreign country. But having the patience in knowing that you might not get the job straight away, you might not find the place you want to live straight away, you might not find the friends straight away, but you moved to get a different life, to get different opportunities, to get a different lifestyle, and you have to know that that's going to take time, and in that taking time, you're going to need patience. Now, the next one is resilience. Resilience kind of encompasses all of the four, to be honest, because when the chips are down and when things aren't great, like I said there, I lost the job. I had then no income coming in a place like Melbourne, which is very expensive to live. Rent is very high. You can compare it to big cities like London. I'm not too sure what you compare it to in the US.
California?
Maybe somewhere like California, possibly.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere like New York. I know New York's quite expensive as well. You have to have the resilience in your own mind. Particularly if you're moving long distance, because yes, of course, your friends and family will always be there to support you. It's great if they are. They might not always be there, and they're certainly not always going to be in the way that you could call them up if you live down the road and go, "Hey, look, I need to answer, help me about this and that." They might be asleep. They might be 12 hours away from actually being able to give you a reply. So, and you might not have made enough friends yet around you to be able to help you out. So you got to dig deep. That advice that you're looking for, you've got to give it to yourself. You've got to be your own best friend. And that's why mental resilience as a whole, and let me tell you, physical resilience, as well, if you move to a new country where you have to adapt to a new climate like Australia, where it's a tough country, heat wise, a lot of people say, is it really even like how inhabitable is it going to be for how many more years, because of the way this world is changing so much? Again, completely other different topic, and we need another podcast to talk about it. But yeah, mental resilience, and to some degree, I guess I could just say resilience, because in the physical and in the mental, you might find that you're having to work 2 or 3 jobs a day. You might find that you're having to work 10, 12, 14, 16-hour days to feed that hunger for the hustle, to do day and night jobs.
I like that.
That's going to cause, that's going to give you,
I like that.
you're going to need some resilience in both the physical and the mental to do that. And then the last one, of course, is determination. A lot of people might think that a lot of the things I've just said, I've just repeated in different ways, but they all do connect and link and lead to each other. Of course, they do kind of sound similar in the ways, yes, because they are similar, because I'm talking about the same niche of things here that you need to get this done. And not only move here, you've been determined enough to make the decision and carry it out and take action. Well done, you've done it. But what are you going to do to stay here? You've got to stay here now. You've done enough to get here. But for me, that was a big thing. It was like, at that time in my life, I had a lot of me used to think about what other people used to think of me. So I didn't want to go home because I didn't want to be seen as a failure. And in that sense, it was like, because I think other people, oh, look, he's back again. It's only been 3 months. And when I moved, people would go, oh, so you think you're just going to move there? You're going to get sponsored? You're going to get permanent residency? And I was like, yes, that's absolutely what I'm going to do. And they'd be like, well, I've just come back from there and I couldn't do that. So you're not going to be able to do it either. So there was a part of me that was kind of had other people's judgment in my mind. That's something I don't worry about now through mindset training. I've been able to completely remove that. Well, not completely, that would be a lie, but 99%. But it was also like, wanting to use that energy that people told me that I wouldn't be able to do it, and turn it around to fuel me, and use that to keep me determined, to keep my head in the game, to stay here. And here I am 5 years later, starting my own businesses here. Eventually got to the point of realizing that if I really want to hit the goals I want to achieve, and that involves for me an abundance of wealth, that I'm not going to be able to do this by working for someone else. So started my own businesses, and now here I am. Just that's all I do, and I'm run my own schedule, and the amount of freedom that's come from that is fantastic. So I know that was a very long tail answer, but I do feel like I have to give a full and complete answer. So
it was a great answer. You listed all of the tools. So one thing I want to ask is, did you see about getting a job before you moved? Because I believe most people would move for a job most of the time, possibly.
Great question, fantastic question, and one that a lot of people call me up, and to anyone that's watching this now, get me on socials, Jake07, same as Facebook and Instagram. I will be happy to spend half an hour on a call with you, giving you some advice on the best way to do this. A lot of people I do speak to regularly, and they say, so did you have a job before you came, or did you just figure it out when you got there? And I did. I just figured it out when I got here. There's a certain amount you can do if you're like a highly paid architect, maybe bank accountant, someone that's really up in a quite a prominent position, probably earning over six figures, that's probably quite more transferable. For me, it was construction. Now, Melbourne is probably the second, if not third, biggest construction boom in the world, after places in the Middle East at the moment.
Wow.
And after speaking to friends that were already here in construction, I knew there would be no problem for me finding work. And of course, I had probably just 2 weeks when I got here to relax and not work. So it was important to me to have that bit of time. I didn't want to be like straight into work. I wanted to have a bit of time to have a look around and do some of the more, just casual work to start with, and enjoy life a bit and get used to the customs and the culture. I think there's only so much, unless you're, in one of those really, high paying niche, instantly transferable jobs, where they can kind of, you've got an accolade of maybe 20, 30 years of work in the same kind of industry or niche.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to, and I think you put a lot of pressure on yourself doing that. Like, be a bit more free flowing with it, be a bit more, if you, like Les Brown says, one of our mentors, if you know the why, then you can endure anyhow. So I think you can get a job before you get here, but I don't think, you're asking a lot, really, I think, of the person that is going to employ you. Because yes, of course, you could have a long tail call like we're having now over video, where you can interact and you can get a sense of who someone really is. But when you're asking someone to make a transaction of their time for your money, then that becomes a little bit different, because I don't believe that you can, and I've employed people before I do now, that it takes a while for that to play out. There's a reason why in most jobs they give you a 4 month or sometimes a 4 week or sometimes a 3 month trial, because they need to check that you're a right fit for the job and the right fit for how that company works, their cultures, their paradigms and such.
Yeah. Probation. I believe it's
probation. That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I think there's two answers there, really. There's not one, and it just depends on what you do.
So how has your mental health changed from when you first came, let's say like the first 2 years to now being the 5th year? You were more angry before, but through self-development, you're better, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I was more angry. It would be fair to say that. And I think that anger came from a frustration, because I've always been a very hardworking person. That was installed in me from a young age, from my father, who was always a very hardworking person, who taught me that, you work hard in life, you get up early, you sometimes have to work long days, but you get the work done and you get rewarded well for that work in this world. And that's how it works. It was taught to me at a young age that I mean, I since learned that it's the value you bring to the hour, not how many hours you do, right? But in that is somewhat true, of course. But in a job that's physical, like construction, you know, my father was a tree surgeon, and that's really when I was in a really young age, a subconscious age of
Wow.
inhaling things. A tree surgeon, a tree arborist, I don't know what you might call it in the US.
Yeah.
So someone who cuts down trees, but you know,
Yeah.
so I would go to work with him and his team, and I would learn, you know, how it all went down, and so, you know, the difference between like what the value you bring to the hour and the amount of hours you do. Well, it's just a fact that if you do more hours and it can fit in more people's jobs and they're going to pay you for them jobs, then you're just going to get paid more money for them. But the frustration there for me in the UK was that, like, I didn't feel that I could ever quite get ahead, because what you got paid and what things cost, it just
Yes.
didn't, there wasn't a fair, there was not, it didn't seem to matter me. There just wasn't enough money left at the end of the week. Now, that was probably just because I hadn't figured out the right way to do it, in all honesty. Of course, there's many people who live in the UK and they're very wealthy and they're very happy and they do very well.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about me here, and for me, I couldn't figure it out. Now, this also, it started for me a huge journey of personal development moving to Australia. I was kind of already on that train, and it was off on its destination, but I hadn't fully absorbed myself in it. I perhaps listened to a video here and there, maybe when I was hungover or feeling crap and needed inspiration, you know, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I didn't listen to videos at scale from people like Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Les Brown. And Les Brown really was always the core for me. Like, I listened to a bit of Tony, but Les was just someone who always spoke to my heart, and I, you know, I felt him in my soul when he spoke. So, and then I got into this more. You know, the Australian way of life is very relaxed, which is part of the reason I moved here. I knew it would align well with me. People are relaxed, people are easygoing, and you know, the sentiment is, don't worry about anything too much because nothing really matters that much. Now, I know that sounds frivolous and very carefree, but it's somewhat how it is here, and I knew that would align with me well, and that gave me the space and time, along with not being always with you know, friends and family and people who perhaps had a negative effect on me from the outside looking in. It gave me that bit of space to go within and really dive into personal development and self-awareness. And I remember a good friend of mine, Yuri Sharmis, who'll be coming on my podcast in a few weeks. He's actually works with psychedelic psychotherapy, one of the first to pioneer it, and he actively practices in it. So something, and he said to me, you know, he's a qualified psychotherapist as well, and he said to me, you know, the road of personal development, it never ends. Once you start it, you can't close the door. And I was like, oh God, that sounds a bit scary. I don't know if I want to be involved in that. But I did, and 5 years later, here I am. And you know, I've not only invested my time in it, but then I started investing financially in it. And there's something that Les Brown says in his latest book, You've Got to Be Hungry. There's a chapter in there that just really aligned with me. And he says, invest 10% of your income every year. Here it is, right on cue. I have mine, but my partner has it. Emily has it. I lent it to her. Invest 10% of your income every year into personal development. It's a road that never ends. And that is absolutely right. And through doing this over this time, through listening to, you know, and it really does take repetition, guys. It's not going to be, within a week I've changed my habits, I've changed my thought process, I've got rid of much of the negative thinking, I've changed the paradigms. If you don't know what paradigms are, look it up. It's you'll go down a wormhole there. But yeah, it built up my resilience. I got rid of the frustration because of the easygoingness of life here, and combined that with journaling, gratitude lists every morning, meditation regularly, not every day. I don't quite find time for it every day, but I try to. And yeah, it really, and that's why I say moving to Australia is one of the single biggest improvements I ever made in my life, because that in itself was, and everything that followed from it became me and who I am today. And I'm not sure who I'd be if I still lived in the UK. Of course, it meant a lot of other things, like a lot of my friends come over and visit me, have a great time. I'm actually working towards the dream for me is to live here for 6 months of the year, and then perhaps in the UK for 3 or 4 months of the year, and then just travel the rest. That's what I'm working towards, and taking big leaps towards that recently in just working for myself now, because it means I don't have to answer to anyone else and ask for, please can I have some holiday? I don't have to do it anymore.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't live that life. Awesome. So what is the best thing about Australia, and what was your worst experience? Would you say your worst was when you first, lost a job? Was that like your big blow that led to your days?
No, it wasn't the worst. No.
No, it wasn't.
There's a story I'll tell. It's not a story I've ever told online or shared before, and it's a story that was. We're gonna go there. Yeah, we're gonna go there.
Yeah.
When I moved to Australia, and I know you asked me, before I came onto this call, did I have any kind of mental health problems or issues I had to get through? Well, yes, depression and a betrayal, which led me to being depressed for some time when I was here. Glad to say I'm over it and through it now, and it caused a block in me for some time, which meant I couldn't move on with intimate relationships. With females, that's my thing. I'm into girls. So what happened was, when I originally came to Australia, I was actually in a relationship. And I mean, when I was in one, it was brilliant until the day I flew out, which was pretty difficult. It wasn't just that I was leaving my life, family, and friends behind. I was leaving kind of my relationship behind as well. So as you can imagine, that was quite difficult. But for me, in this relationship I was in, me and the person I was in it with just wanted different things. Sorry, I've got to let the green ghost come back because
it's okay.
It's getting hot. It's getting hot in here. It's the wind moving the blind. But what I was in a relationship essentially, and the relationship kind of ended properly on the day I got here. And then what transpired was the girl that I was in the relationship with, and a best friend of mine who'd been a best friend of mine since primary school for well over 20 years, they actually ended up sleeping together, and they didn't form a relationship, but they slept together, and that really rocked me to the core. It really, in two senses, the person I've been in a relationship with for 2 or 3 years, when I look back now, I can completely understand why I probably really pissed them off by doing what I did, and there was a seeking of revenge, wanting to be acted on there. And then, what really cut me deep was that my friend for 20 years that would do something like that to me, I would not have done something like that to him. And it really did rock me to the core. So it's interesting that you ask that what was the kind of worst experience I had, and that wasn't really anything to do with Australia. It was something that came back from England.
Yeah.
For a long time, that led me on a path of not wanting to trust anybody else, and not opening up my heart to anyone else, not wearing it on my sleeve as I used to, and I somewhat do now, and just being it led me to a point actually of becoming quite emotionally unavailable to others, and just of being, well, hey, look, this is probably how all things are going to go, and someone's going to, F someone over in the end. So why don't I just not get involved in any of the relationships to that degree, and then I can never be hurt, and everything will be all right, and I'll live happily ever after. Well, after a while, I kind of realized that that's not a healthy way to deal with it. And so I seeked out some proper help, and in that I found therapy. And I like to think of therapy, and this is a subject I speak confidently about because it really completely changed my life. And I know these are the kind of things you like to get into here on this podcast. So,
Yeah.
you're really drawing it out of me here today. I've never really spoke about this in a public forum before at all, but the gym to me, and I say this to every man and woman out there, but I'm really speaking to you right now. If you're a young man who's watching, you need to get rid of this paradigm, this stereotype of what a therapist is, and why you go and see them. A lot of people think you go to see a therapist because you've gone crazy. No. If it's already too late by then, right? You know, you go to see a therapist to stop you from going crazy, right? It's a proactive thing, not a reactive thing. I'm not saying, look, if you feel like you've gone crazy, then don't go to see them. Of course, go to see them. Nothing is irreparable, you know. But for me, I like to see therapy as the gym for my brain. I've been going to therapy for well over 2 years now. Now I go not to fix anything, because I've fixed most of those things, not all of them, not going to say all of them, 95% of those things. Life's a work in progress, and so is the body and the mind all the time. But now I go to more find out about who I am and the things that I kind of desire and want, perhaps why I desire and want them, and my therapist helps me to move closer to them. Now, I know that sounds pretty strange, maybe and unusual to people, because that's not the common way that therapy works, or that people think they go and see them for. But yeah, like I say again, I'm speaking to you, the young men out here right now. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. And you're not weak because you're doing it. You're doing it to remain strong. You know, particularly in countries like this, in Australia, where, I mean, this is just a staggering statistic, and it hurts me every time I say it, and I hope it's still correct at the time of speaking, but suicide is the biggest killer for men in Australia. Like, forget disease, forget road accidents, forget accidents at work, forget, you know, self-induced, you know, problems. Like, well, I guess you could say suicide is kind of a self-induced problem. But for me, that is just a staggering statistic, particularly in a country like this that is thought of as so easygoing and relaxed. But and I really think that needs to change. And how does that change? It changes by us having conversations like we're having today, and people hearing them online, which is the place where everyone is these days. So yeah, like, so that's what happened. Yeah, the betrayal happened. It took me a long time to get over it. I made peace with one of those people. Haven't quite made peace with the other one yet. You know, sure I will one day. Would really like to, because, you know, as something that, you know, Mr. Brown, our mentor, told us, forgiving is not forgetting. It's remembering without anger, without guilt, without shame. And that's a place you have to get to be able to move on and pick yourself up. And you don't always have to, you know, another thing that I was taught is you don't always have to forgive someone. You don't always have to directly speak to them and tell them. You know, you can just do it with inside yourself and just say, look, I've made peace with that inside myself. I forgive that person, you know, and move on. It's done. Christ, I held on to it for so long. And I was like, this shit does not matter anymore. Why am I still holding on to it? But, you know, I have to be honest and say, to completely kick its ass and get rid of it, therapy there really helped me. And another thing about therapy, while I talk about it, yeah, let me pull back the curtain a bit. How do you go and see someone? People go, well, how do I go and do it? You know, I don't want everyone to know I'm going to do it. Of course, that's fine. And I understand that. I didn't either at first. When I first went, I would have never spoke about it like this. I would have never spoke about it and openly talked about it. And now I'm in a comfortable place where I can. But how do you do it? You know, go to your doctor. That's completely confident and private. You know, your doctor signs a legal oath when he qualifies and practices that he cannot share anything that goes on between you and him in that room. That is a legal fact. He cannot do that. And you know, from a good human point of view, I can't think of a better word right now. He's not gonna. So like, remember that when you go in that room with him or her, everything's confident. And, you know, just say to him, look, I'm not feeling good in my mental health. Could you put me in touch with someone who can help me? And that's how it's going to go. I went to see a lady at first, and we worked together for a year. And then I decided that, you know, this, and it was funny, she kind of led me to it, that it wasn't quite working for me. Just me and her working together anymore, and perhaps I should go and see someone different. And I thought, yeah, that's right. I perhaps need a male perspective here. And then I now work with a gentleman who's massively brought me leaps and bounds, as the lady did. But, you know, what I'm pertaining to here is that the first person you see might not be the person for you, but don't let that dismay you or dissuade you, and don't let that make you think that this isn't going to work, and do not let it make you quit. You know, you can go and see 5 or 10, you know, of very different ages, backgrounds, or male or female, of course, before you find the one that locks in and works for you.
Yes.
So that's what happened. That's what I did to get over it. But you did ask me something else there, didn't you? You said, why is Australia, what do you like about Australia the most, is what you said.
Yeah, that's the second thing I asked.
Do we have a time here that we're limited to? Because I mean, I don't have one. I'm just wondering if you have one.
That's okay. You can go ahead. But before you go ahead, I just want to say how incredibly vulnerable you are and how you overcame it, because a lot of people stay shut off, and you could have chose to, but you chose to get help because that's your willpower for you to do that. Possibly listening to a lot of Les Brown and a lot of other stuff, but I'm really proud of you that, you know, you didn't stay in that cold space because of what other people did to you. Why should you punish yourself because of what others did? You know, that's not your responsibility. That they hurt.
And something that someone said to me, which turned it around for me, is that, look, Jake, you know, you're not in charge of or responsible for what other people do.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that although other people have hurt you, you know, they have their own reasons for doing that you may not fully understand. That doesn't mean, you know, in the first instance, of course, I did judge them. You're an a-hole, you're this, you're that. You know, I was very angry. And then I reacted completely instead of responding, and reacted in an angry, frustrated way. And even did silly things to try and get back against them, which, you know, we just got it back now. And I was like, God, that was so childish. But someone said to me, you know, it's not your responsibility how other people behave. And just know that although someone did this to you, hold your head high and know that you wouldn't do it to someone else. You know, and that kind of pulled me through that. And, you know, you talked about vulnerability there.
Yeah.
That's part of personal development, right? You have to go to a space of being vulnerable and exposing you to get to know who you really are. And I don't just mean, you know, when people go, who are you? Well, I'm Jake Fowler. Well, well, that's just two words that have been given to you. So
like Bob says.
You two as your name, right? Okay, well, I'm me. This is me, my physical body. No, that's just the body you live in. You know, people watching this right now will be like, what the hell is he talking about? And up until a few weeks ago, until I had this training with Bob Proctor and getting into results, right? I was wondering what Bob Proctor meant too, but, you know, now we look like we're just plugging the show.
They're like, who are these people?
Yeah, no.
They're like, who are these people?
Yeah, it's like, and people are like, so who are you then? Well, you know, it's a question you really have to ask yourself, you know, who really are you and what do you really want? And to go into that, you have to go to a place of being vulnerable and of exposing you to you. And that's the only way you can get better and grow and get yourself to a place of just happiness, wellness, and abundance of both of those things as well.
I just have to say that you have a great girlfriend now. Yes, he does. And she's a dance instructor, right? She's a psychotherapy dance instructor.
Yes, a dance therapist in
dance therapist, which is very awesome.
But yeah, she particularly works with children with special needs.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to wrap it up.
I have to correct you though there, because if Emily watches it, she won't be too happy. She wouldn't be calling me her girlfriend at the minute. We are seeing each other. We've been going through a few things, which I'm not going to talk about now, but yeah, just for the record, we're seeing each other just in case. So I don't want to step on any toes here, and you haven't at all. You haven't at all. That's obviously what you knew to the best of your knowledge. But no, she's an absolutely fantastic woman, and you know, she is the apple in my eye, and she's been a big part actually in my personal development, particularly recently, when I did go back into a space of being very emotionally unavailable, and stuck with me through it. And yeah, just has been absolutely, you know, a pillar of strength to me to help me get through this time, because it's been a difficult, I mean, I know we're not here to talk about that this time in this year and 2020 and the Miley Cyrus, as I like to call it, because I don't like to use the word. It's, you know, it's been a difficult time this year for us all. And if you're watching this now, I don't need to tell you that, you know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. What I'm going to share with you now is common sense and common knowledge, but it's not always common practice, you know. But I was in denial for a lot of the year. Oh, okay, well, this hasn't really affected my business, therefore then it hasn't really affected me. Well, that's not the case, and it took me many months into the year to actually accept that, okay, I'm in complete denial here. This has really affected me. It has really affected my relationships in the physical and the mental sense. Like, just one thing that, like, I haven't been able to go home and see my family this year. I would usually have done that once by this time, and would certainly be planning now, have a flight booked together, then go back at Christmas. People go, oh, boo-hoo, Jake, you didn't get to fly around the world and do your thing this year. But I mean, that's not it. It's I didn't get to see my friends and family this year, which is just massively important. Of course,
For you.
In things like this, you can see them, but being able to actually spend physical time with them and touch them, and see them in front of your eyes is a different thing. So that was a big challenge for me, and hopefully I'm trying to get a few things sorted so I can actually get over there at Christmas, but we'll see. But it's been a difficult year for us all, and there's no shame or guilt in admitting that. I know I did. I know I sat in the denial for a while, and that was something me and Emily come up against, because her and her beautiful female brain, which the male brain is beautiful as well, but it works in very different ways to the female brain. She was open and honest and said, hey, look, this is really affecting me. And I said, well, it's not affecting me. So, why do I have to understand that it affects you? And of course, that caused a lot of problems for us as well. But, if I can just wrap that up in saying, then I'm going to steal another quote from Les Brown here, and I have no shame in doing that, because frankly, so many of his quotes are so good and they align with me and who I am, and that's why I like repeating them. Ask for help, not because you're weak, but because you want to remain strong. Ask for help, not because you're weak, but because you want to remain strong. That's what 2020 is encompassing, really.
It is. Congrats, Jake. You did awesome. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Pardon? Oh, where can
Tell everyone where they can find you. Yeah.
Well, I'm quite present on this thing that is about these days called the internet. It's everywhere. It's in your hand. It's in your house. It's at the library. It's at the school. And you can find me on there. You'll be very pleased to know. At JakeHero7 on Facebook and Instagram. My website, which is hungerforthehustle.com. You can find out more about me there in the speaking sense. And my podcast, of course, Hunger for the Hustle, which is available live, and multiple episodes get put out per week on Facebook. It actually goes out later on Instagram. You can't do live on Instagram in that format at the moment, but it's live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, and I think that's it. And it's also available on Spotify as well as just the audio. Ooh. So they're the places you can find me. Always looking for more guests for the podcasts. So either hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, or just anywhere that you can find me to talk about that.
That means I'm on Spotify too. Yes, I am on Spotify with Jake.
Are you on Spotify? Yeah, I have to actually manually upload the episodes onto it afterwards. I'm not sure. Some we can talk about that. I don't know if you would be. It doesn't do it automatically, is what I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. It took a little bit of time for us to get this together. There were a couple of stumbling blocks. I'll put my hands up and say, I messed up a couple of times in getting this together. But, timing. And I think this was the perfect time for this to be done. Because I think we've shared some great value here for the audience. You've really drawn some things out of me, particularly some things I've never shared in this space before. So thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much for your time and energy, and thank you for your patience and persistence in getting me on the show.
Thank you, Sadhguru.
Yes. Yeah.